Welcome to episode 182 of the Confidence Through Health podcast, where I speak with Lizzie Raymond of NoBull Burgers. And we talk about food. We talk about food manufacturing. We talk about issues, things you need to look for, why plant-based foods are being manufactured, how to look for the correct types of, specifically burgers, how to look for the correct types of burgers when you're shopping, especially if NoBull Burgers is not in your area, like it's not in my area, and yet I think they're working on it. But what do you need to look for? What are the issues? And like as somebody posted yesterday on Facebook, one of my friends that said, be careful because these bioengineered foods are going to be in restaurants and they're not going to have to label them and they're going to be all over the place. So you have to really be careful of what you eat if you're focused on your health, if you're focused on living a healthy lifestyle from a longevity standpoint and taking care of yourself into the future, maybe not today, but into the future, you want to be healthy. You'll be really careful about what you eat, what you consume, where it's coming from, and what the motives are for the people that are making those foods. Because yes, I want you to enjoy things. Yes, I want them to taste good. Yes, I want you to have entertainment around food. But ultimately, as Lizzie says, it's fuel for your body. And so what goes in is going to change how your body acts and operates as it digests the food, as it interacts with your cells, all of those things that I know I've talked about before. And so I thought it was a great conversation. I learned definitely learned some things about how food manufacturing works and what they're trying to attempt to do, in that you don't have to put preservatives and chemicals in everything. So great conversation with Lizzie. I hope you enjoy it. And if you're in an area where they serve, or you can check them out online, all those links are going to be in the show notes. So without any further ado, here's Lizzie Raymond in the conversation about NoBull Burgers. Well, thank you, Lizzie, for being a guest on the Confidence Through Health podcast.
Awesome, Jerry. Thank you so much for having me.
So I'm really excited about the discussion because, as we talked before, like even some things that came out last night from some of my friends about like questions and concerns in the food industry. But before we get into all that stuff, like, so your mom started this trend movement in your family circle that became a business. So tell us a little bit about how that started and like where the passion for that came from.
Yeah, super. I think it's a really unique story.
Yeah.
So my mom was actually raised in the Virgin Islands. She was moved there with her family when she was like 10 years old, 9 years old. And so, was really influenced by just the lifestyle there and a lot of the beliefs with the food systems and eating closer to the earth. And actually, it's an island, so they're not eating a lot of meat or, a lot of imported meat and things like that. And so she just kind of had that already influenced around her, and started really understanding at a very young age. I mean, this was in the early 70s, about just the benefits of eating plants and eating closer to the earth and all of that kind of that world, so to speak. And it really just kind of just stayed with her as she became a young mom, and she eventually was a self-taught chef and caterer for most of my life. So me and my family, I'm one of 5 kids. We grew up in the catering world, and just always with my mom's kind of voice in the back of our head of foods that we could have and couldn't have, and we were definitely the kids with the weird lunches and couldn't eat certain things. And I'd go to have sleepovers at friends and totally like raid their closet of the junk cereal and stuff. But looking back now, just so unbelievably grateful, and really just seeing how ahead of her time she was in understanding that the food that you put in your body and the effects that it have. And I think, as we were talking to earlier, we know there's so much more education out there now. There's so much more
Right.
access to this all. So yes, like we are starting to understand, but this was in the 70s and 80s even. And so really kind of at the forefront of understanding that, and really just instilled that in us, in all of us kids, and use that in just her ways of cooking food, and just always eating, real foods and foods that you can pronounce, the ingredients that was made of. And this veggie burger, the original flavor was actually inspired by my grandma's lentil soup recipe, which was like an organic lentil and brown rice, carrots, spinach soup that she kind of used as the inspiration to construct this veggie burger, because she was craving, something to put ketchup and mustard on, and wanting something to feel good about feeding her kids. And so that's kind of where the original started, where she would just make it more for potlucks and some events here and there, and quickly became, she'd whip up a batch and we would just, devour it and be all excited about it, and knew that compared to what we were getting at the grocery store, like it was night and day in comparison. And so it was kind of something that over the years, she started becoming known as the veggie burger lady. They wouldn't remember her name, but they would remember these veggie burgers that she made. And more veggie burgers started coming to the market. And of course, my sisters and I were out there trying them all and comparing it to what we would make, what we would enjoy at home. And they didn't. I mean, as you know yourself, and just with what we were discussing happening in grocery stores and restaurants, like if especially with meat alternative products out there now, you have to compromise. You have to pick one or the other. You have to pick either you want clean ingredients and ingredients that provide nutrition. Usually you're going to sacrifice flavor on that. 9 times out of 10, they're going to taste like the cardboard box that it came in.
Yeah.
And so, or if you want to go for flavor, you're normally compromising on ingredients, and they're filled with filler,
additives and chemicals,
all of that. And so we kind of, as we were enjoying this at home, and really just for our family, just knew that nothing else was available in the marketplace like it. And so we kind of just was one of those things where it was always wondering what if we didn't do this, and we really felt like there was a missing, it was filling a niche out there. And so we started very hyper local in Charlottesville, Virginia, where we're from. And we started at farmers markets. I actually, I bartended all my way through college. So I had tons of chef friends that were willing to start it off on their menus. And that really gave us this kind of just slow, organic start to the brand itself. We, really truly didn't know where it was going to end up today. My background was in education. My mom was a caterer, and we just kind of knew we needed to get it out there. And it's been a wild roller coaster ever since then. Ups and downs.
I mean, and like you said, it's if you've got something that tastes good and has the right ingredients, like that's, and because I've got family members that will say, that and older, and they've been doing it for years and years and years, they're a certain way, and they'll say the comment of, well, if it's healthy, it must not taste good.
Oh, right. I know.
So why would I want to eat it?
And that's, I agree, right? Like there's been so many things, and I think the whole word of like, it's healthy or things like that it automatically means it needs to lack flavor, but that's like, it's so the opposite.
Right.
It's the opposite. I get so jazzed about food that not only is providing nutrient density and fuel to my body, which is the purpose of why, why we eat, why we should be eating. And so to have that, fulfilling that need of fuel and nutrition and providing all of these vitamins and minerals for our body to do the miracle that it does every day, to have that taste amazing and like, make you do the like little happy dance shimmy because it tastes so good. That's a winning situation right there.
So when because my kids face the same thing. Like my kids came home one time. I remember this like a year and a half ago, and they were like, "Can you not send that in my lunch again? Because I got made fun of at the table at lunch." Like, and
I feel for them. Totally for them.
and it's like, okay, I get it. Okay. And it was, I mean, like it was a frozen fruit smoothie, like I'm like, come on, guys, y'all see this stuff all the time. Like, um, but when you had friends over, when you had like, and that was like, was the response like, I'm not gonna, I'll pass, or were they like, was that a sign that it's like this is really good because people that didn't eat that way were like devouring it?
It was, I think that was initially what kind of got the buzz or got that idea in my mom's head that like, hey, I should do something with this was more of like, yeah, the people's reactions. And honestly, when we took that leap of faith to just even get a booth at the farmer's market, even a small step like that in and of itself, that summer season at the farmer's markets totally solidified that this was something different. And then this was 2011, 2012. So very early on, we started seeing the plant-based meat alternative explode. And that happened in 2017. And that was due to the fake meat, bubble just blowing up of the Beyond Meats and the Impossible Burgers of the world. And I can gladly talk about that all day, but it just is interesting to see, because I even remember when products like Beyond Meat started coming to the scene. Of course, we had Morning Stars and Gardeins and whatnot. Sure. Yep. And they're still in the game, but obviously Beyond Meats and now they're doing something different, and it's obviously very, very much simulates meat-like products. But it's just interesting to have watched that kind of rise and decline in the sense, because I do believe people want to eat this way. They understand there's something in there that clicks. That's like, okay, yes, plants equals good. I should eat these. Right. But the problem is, and we do, this is just the nature of humans sometimes, where we just take something good and we kind of, we mess with it a little too much. And then we end up having products that are actually, can maybe do more harm than good sometimes. So I think that this product is following that. Yeah.
And I think some of that is tradition, right? Absolutely. Like, because when it comes to a burger, I'm sure that y'all ran into this. It's like, okay, it's not meat, it's not a burger, right? Like people that would say that stuff, like, right? Like it's not, and I know that's why the Beyond Meat and the Impossible Burger, those things came out to mimic a meat product, not necessarily provide a healthy, because I remember when vegans were suing Burger King because they were cooking them on the same grill, and they're like, we're not trying to be vegan, we're just trying to mimic, right? And it's like, okay, so if there's a separation there of like, wait, if we're trying to actually be plant-based, provide nutrients through the food, we need to look at these other options over here.
Totally. And I think it goes to why you choose to eat, what kind of lifestyle and food diet, you're abiding by. And I mean, there are tons of people out there that are choosing to be vegan, and it's nothing to do with health. It's for animal rights or some other motivating factor. For me, for my family, the reason why my mom felt like she needed to bring this out there and why our family kind of has made it this mission to help people eat closer to the earth is because we understand and we believe in the benefits of it in a whole food plant-based diet for our health and overall health of just our physical health, our mental health, our planet's health. And that's our why, and I think that goes into a lot of our messaging. And, I think there's a time and a place for your junk food and, your all, the things that you can kind of deviate off of. Absolutely. It's really, going back to that balance of it all and understanding your body and the benefits that you're trying to bring for it as well. All play a part.
Right. And I love the closer to the earth, like motive, because to me, that automatically says, okay, well, there's not preservatives, there's not chemicals, there's not, like, you don't have to come out and necessarily state that. If you say closer to the earth, to me, that means, like, because that's one of the things that I argue with people sometimes, and I'm like, because I've had people that have told me, like, their doctors told them not to eat fruit because it was messing up their digestion system, and I'm like, no, your digestion system's messed up because you haven't been eating this stuff. And so it's like, go the other way around, because the fruit's coming from the tree, that's coming from the earth, that, like, that's what it's there for, is to provide us with nourishment.
Absolutely. I love that. And I love, something we say often too is, and we, with all of the new products coming out, we kind of had to coin a new way of saying, like, okay, well, NoBull is a true farm to table veggie burger. We're not a farm to lab to table veggie burger. And that's what you're getting with a lot of these meat alternatives out there, and plant-based overall, vegan overall. We were talking about how the weight of that word is just totally decreased over time, and you really can't hold much value to what plant-based means. It's really about looking into those ingredients and seeing what it's made of. And I think that we're starting to see a shift in consumers' shopping trends, where they are starting to see this, this shift in wanting more of the clean labeled foods. And I think that, that's another just reason why we feel more compelled just to get the word out there, because we still are, a small company, and not a lot of people, know about these options out there. And it goes to just, not just awareness, but also, like we were mentioning earlier, just kind of like, you only know what you know. And you also, a lot of us eat this the way we eat because that's how our parents ate, or that's how the people in our community around us eat, or that's what we have access to. And so there's so much of it that can get, that can play a part, and it can be really overwhelming too. Like when I'm sure too, when you made your switches into your different, diets and lifestyles, there's so much information out there. There's so much, there's so much noise on both sides, and it really can, it can kind of crowd out why you're trying to get, help kind of get you off track from staying motivated, getting on track with these choices. So it's important to, even just start small, and definitely the education on it is super important too.
Well, and so reading the labels falls into that, because I know a lot of people know now to read the labels, right? Like, that's been pushed for several years now. Okay, what's in it? Can you pronounce it? Can you understand it? But there's also, I know a lot of people will say, well, but if it's in the store and it's been shipped from somewhere across the country, how is it still good if they don't have preservatives in it, if they don't have chemical, like, there's that thought process too within people. And so with that piece, but also, like, just for, my wife has tried to make, like, black bean burgers at home, right? And they fall apart. And so that's one of the things that, she makes them, and she's like, what am I missing? I'm missing a filler. Am I missing a da-da-da? She's like, we're not going to put it in there. We're just going to eat it. It's going to crumble apart. We're just going to wind up eating it with a fork. It's going to be fine. But those are things that I know people look at and go, like, they're trying to trick us with something, right? There's something in there because it looks too good. Right.
Yeah. And I'd have to, my response to that, at least for our product, is that it says it in the name, Jerry. There's no bull. Like, this is, I love even saying to consumers, like, all of the ingredients in our products, in our line, we have a line of 5 flavors. All of them are ingredients that you could go buy at the grocery store, take the hours to go grocery shopping, prep it, make it all together. And you could make that at home. Everything in there is an ingredient that your grandmother's going to recognize what it is. Right. And that's just a core value that we have. And no matter what new flavors come out, new forms, we're experimenting with trying to get outside of just quote unquote burgers or patties. That is going to remain a core value of that. And yes, it's not your hockey puck veggie burger. Right. It's not your meat burger either that's congealed together. So like, you do have to handle it with a little more care, and absolutely you get your veggie burgers that occasionally can fall apart with a piece of a vegetable coming out or something. Right. And I think that maybe comes to attest to just also like what we're so used to. We're so used to things kind of looking or seeming or tasting a certain way. Um, and I think it's just kind of making those just those differentiations in what you're eating, and being kind of okay with it maybe being a little different than what you're used to, because you know the benefits of it are so much better. But you know, just to back to the line itself and just the ingredients in it, it's an organic lentil and organic brown rice as the base in all 5 flavors. And so it's that complete protein as well. So it's providing all of the amino acids that our body can't produce on our own. And it's just a nice, super, very filling, it's got complex carbs in it that you need to kind of keep you sustained throughout the day. And then depending on the flavor, it's various roasted veggies and seasonings, depending on what mood you're in for.
Right. So, and I think the seasoning piece is a piece that I think a lot of people forget when they go plant-based, and I know people that I've coached have been like, okay, well, you put this on the menu, what can I season it with? I'm like thyme, basil, whatever you want. Like,
world is your oyster.
Right. Like, just like go for it. Like it's okay. Versus I think a lot of times, because we get that thing that's packaged, that's already seasoned and flavored a certain way, and we're like, oh, we don't have to do anything to it, and this is actually like, okay, well, you're going to get this, you have to do a little bit of cooking, right? And so it's like getting you back in the kitchen, which is not an entirely bad thing at all, because research has shown people that cook more meals at home, whether it's from scratch or not, tend to have healthier lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think too, just, obviously convenience is a big thing right now, and we're living such busy lives, and it goes back to just the education, if we are learning a new recipe, and that can trickle on to other, spread out to different kinds of meals, or you learned how to season something in a vegetable in this dish, and you can introduce it into a new recipe. I think that is such a powerful, just tool to have in the kitchen. And especially as you're starting to use food for purpose and for fuel and for nutrients for our body. I think the one thing I love about the line is that, so we have 5 different flavors, and they're quite different. We have like the original, the OG, the one that I've literally been eating since I was in the womb, and I still eat them on a weekly basis, doing tacos with them tonight. Nice. We have the original, which is like, it's a little more universal. You can do it with a salsa, barbecue sauce, or something different. But then we have other more defined flavors, like our Madras curry with a warm yellow Madras curry flavor. Wow. That's delicious, or a spicy Italian that is really great with a marinara sauce. And so, it is just kind of using it as that center of the plate protein. Obviously, it is advertised and packaged as a veggie burger. That's just kind of how they were born, kind of, so to speak. But we're seeing now, and even if you check out our recipe page or our socials at NoBull Burger, you'll see just the world, the plethora of different ways to have it as that protein source for you, along with fiber and lots of minerals and nutrients that you don't see in other meat alternatives. So it's super exciting. Yeah.
And one of the things that I really love is that, I don't think people understand. I came across this several years ago, and just researching nutrition and and learning more about how to read labels and what do all these things mean and all this stuff. And that the natural flavors line, right? Yeah. When you talk about flavoring,
gets you every time, man.
Like natural flavors. And it's and I remember somebody's talking about it, and they were like, well, think what's natural? Like anything around the earth could be natural. It could be anything from an animal. It could be anything from, anything. Like it could be poisonous.
It's anything. Scary. And when I started learning, and it's so hard to avoid, because once I, and I'm in the industry, I'm in CPG, I'm in manufacturing, and I, even had to educate on myself on that years ago, where it was like, this term here, natural flavor, like what exactly is that? And it's definitely something that we have strayed away from. It's hard to avoid in so
Sure.
many things, like myself even.
Sure.
But it's just, so one other thing that we have to now be cautious of and weary of in our food systems. And I mean, we can talk a whole other conversation
Right.
on our America's
Right.
food system and the problems with that. But, it's just another one of those items that I think for us, and even as people approach us, hey, try this, additive in your product,
Mhm.
or hey, if you add this, it can get more umami flavor. And
Right.
it's just like, well, what is it
Yeah.
exactly? And it just, again, goes back to those core values that my mom instilled in my family and is now transferred into our business, is that, it's closer to the earth, 100% plants, 0% full. And so we
Right.
kind of use that as like our guiding light, our
Yeah.
north.
Yeah. And I mean, I love that, knowing, I mean, how I am, as a raw vegan. I mean, I love that because it's the proof that I've seen in my life is like beyond, yeah, because I was the guy that when my wife went out of town, especially if she took the kids out of town, that, 8, 10 years ago, I'm cooking a steak on the grill. I'm like, dad's home alone. I'm like just gonna have a party by myself. And now to be like, no, I'm the guy that just, like, I'm gonna go get an apple, and I'm gonna eat a bell pepper, and like I'm
And
gonna be
winning
good,
races over
and
20-year-olds and stuff.
right, and so it's like, oh my gosh, okay, there's something to this. But and I know that not everybody's going to be able to make that commitment, but to make the commitment to go away from meat, because it is, research has proven, as we talked about, research has proven that it's much better for you to be heavily plant-based, if not entirely plant-based. And so finding these options out there that, and not to like downplay anybody else, but we really need to look at what are the ingredients, where are they coming from, and in the importance of, and in my opinion, really it comes down to also the importance of like, what's the company mission and belief? Because like you said, those are your North Star things. Like if I know that a company is truly into that, then I'll pay the extra dollar versus the, Impossible Burger or whatever, like whatever the difference is, because they're not trying to hide anything from me.
Right. And it's becoming, I think, as we get into like big food and just the things that we have to like be cautious of and look for, I think we're starting to see that because, and we were talking about this earlier too, where it's this wave of people that are not necessarily, they're not vegans, they're not raw, right, they're not even vegetarian. They
Right.
are flexitarian, this new term, right? That
Yep.
is used. And it is such, I think it's a wonderful thing. I think that we've been seeing that number of people who claim to, want to incorporate more plants into their diet. It's rising and rising and rising. We're seeing it in the shopping trends. And I think we're seeing it as a test to clean plant-based products coming out there, because there was so much of just an influx of this vegan, plant-based, meat, and it was 90% of it was garbage, right, and things that you flip that ingredient list over and you didn't know what any of it was. And so I think we're making it harder on shoppers because we have to do a little bit more thinking while we're in the grocery store. Mm-hmm. And obviously, people like you, Jerry, you're super committed to this. It's not diet, obviously. It's a lifestyle, right? It's a way that we live our lives every day because we understand and we've lived and felt and seen the benefits of it. Mm-hmm. But that's not majority of people. And I also try to remember that too, where most of the people that I'm talking to these days are people that are, weren't raised with the mom who had packed her lunch and was making her look at the ingredients. The majority of people are almost even just kind of getting introduced to this idea or starting to realize, hey, I have high blood pressure. What can I do? Right. Or I'm pre-diabetic. What can I do? Or I want to go play with my grandkids every weekend. What can I do? Those are the things. And I think when we can find more approachable ways that are not so extreme and not as scary and not not spending 5 hours in the kitchen or 3 hours in the kitchen.
Right.
It's providing those options now for people that, yeah, you can learn how to make a quick vinaigrette, put some fresh seasonal veggies out, you know, have your veggie, boom, done. And you've got full protein, full fiber, complex carbs, nutrients. You're going to be good to sustain for a few hours. And it takes a lot of the hard work out for us, because I think that also maybe defers people from attempting or trying to cook more or learn more or make these switches, is because it's intimidating, right? And we're like, we don't know what to do or where to start or how to do this. And so try to make this, at least for a meat alternative option.
Yeah.
Trying to make it, you know, very simple, very approachable, and most importantly, very tasty. It's got to taste good.
Right.
You know, that's the number one right there. Gotta have some flavor.
Yeah. And one of the things that you mentioned, and it's like, and I know that you're not a doctor, I'm not a doctor, but being in when you start looking at food and you start researching it, you start, as much as I'm sure that y'all have, it's like, you look at it and you go, okay, but when you're in that situation of pre-diabetes, or you're in that situation of high blood pressure and you're trying to avoid going on medication, like, these are things that are very important to fueling your body properly, right? And it's not looking at it at that point, like, as much as we want to say, like, but I want everything to taste good and I want to pleasure all, you know, but like, you got to take a step back sometimes. You go like, okay, wait a minute. It may not taste the same way as other things, but those other things got me to where I am. That's not necessarily what I want. So
true. And how much your system, your digestive tract, your microbiome, all of that is because of what we've been consuming, what we've putting into it, not only just, you know, our physical food, but just our outside environments and things like that. Like, it's our body's way. I mean, with the high blood pressure or, you know, pre-diabetic, it's our body's way of telling us, or even anxiety, depression, sleep, all of these things. It's our body's way of communicating to us, like, something has to shift. And, you know, while I again, not a doctor, as you just said, but like, and while we know that there are many other contributing factors that can happen, food, to me, like, that just is when I start talking about, you know, nutritional psychology and just how or even just one switch can drastically help change, because of the environments that we've been putting our bodies in up until this point, to where it got to that point. And so, yeah, you're so right. You need to have kind of that jolt for a moment, and that understanding, like, that you're making that transition and that switch. And the foods that, you know, it's dopamine, it's intended to, you know, make us addicted to these sugary snacks and salty things. And it's designed that way. It definitely has to have that shift. But I think once you take that step back and you start exploring more and start really kind of giving your system that reboot, and like you said, you start seeing the different results, and then you're just like, it's really hard to go back.
Yeah. Well, and I want to put this disclaimer in there for anybody that, like, goes, okay, I want to try that. I'm going to switch over and start, like, you may feel ill effects, like, quote unquote, ill effects with your digestive tract. And it's not because you're allergic to the food. It's not because the food's bad. It disrupts you. I can't eat that kind of stuff. It's because your body's going, oh, this is different. Let me adjust. I have to course correct. This is what I really want. And I've said this with other people. It's like, your body just sort of goes like, oh, this is what I really want. Let's get rid of all this other junk so I can clean everything out and enjoy what you're giving me now. And a lot of people take that the other way and go like, oh, I can't have that because that upset my stomach and that caused me all these issues. And I was in the bathroom all the time and da da da. I'm like, that might last for 24 or 48 hours as you make the shift. But then, and the longer you go, and it's one of the things that I noticed as I went from the standard American diet to being a little more cautious, to being vegetarian, to being vegan over the course of took a course of about a year before I made that complete switch. And I noticed that my taste buds changed, and I started like, so that I know a lot of people are like, how can you eat that? I'm like, it tastes great. You know, and they're like, oh, but it tastes like cardboard or it tastes like, I'm like, no, it tastes great. Like your taste
Yeah.
buds just have to change
Yeah.
from what you've been eating. Like you said, because the stuff that they're feeding you is so sugary and so salty to hit that dopamine fix that your taste buds don't taste anything else.
Yeah. I think that the narrative that healthy food or that, natural food, whole food is, bland or boring and not like all of that's just noise to me, because it's like, well, let's learn how to use spices and herbs, and let's learn how to make a really simple, clean dressing that doesn't have 3/4 canola oil in it, and
Right.
like things like that. And it is just a learning curve and learning. But when you make, especially when it comes to our health, right,
Yeah.
Jerry, like that's and thinking about longevity and not just living long, but living long comfortably,
Right.
functionally, that to me is just, food is such a crucial part. Obviously there's environment, there's hereditary, there's all these other parts.
Sure.
But when you think about the thing that we're literally putting into our bodies multiple times a day, all day, all of our lives, like how could it not play a part? And
Yeah.
so I think, I love hearing stories from people that have just made little switches here and there into their diets, and they start with one thing. They start with maybe a meatless Monday, and
Right.
then they're going to 3 days a week without it, or they're dropping the sodas, these little things here and there.
Right.
And it just kind of propels into this hopefully, this momentum where they start seeing the results, and they're like, I can't not do this now.
Right. Well, and I think that's one, you got to keep an open mind to it, right? And you got to be aware. But the other thing is, there's, with the people that are on the standard American diet, a lot of people don't realize how bad they feel because they just feel bad all the time, physically, not necessarily emotionally or mentally. I mean, obviously there's that piece too, because the food is affecting you that way. But like, they don't know, and so when you have that one day a week or 2 days a week where you're like, okay, I'm going to do it this way, you'll start to feel like, oh, why did I feel better that day? Like, why did that day seem to just go so smoothly?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can step back and be open-minded and pay attention to it, a lot of times you'll start to realize like, oh, I need to eat more plants. I need to go more that direction. I'm not necessarily saying everybody has to give up meat or any of that. I mean, that's your choice as you start to feel out like where you are. Like you said, if you need to be a flexitarian, you need to be a vegetarian, you need to be, even a lot of people are saying 20% is fine. Mediterranean diet, eating fish, like everybody's going to be a little bit different, but where most people are in America is like 90% chicken nuggets.
Yep. And you look at their plate, and 90% of the plate is meat. Whereas,
Right.
about even how our ancestors would eat, it's like 90% of the plate is plants, and there might be 10%, 15% might be something like that. But
yeah,
it is, it's just, I think the direction we need to be heading, because we look at, the top causes of death for our country. We look at, the mental health epidemic we are in right now. We look at our climate crisis we are in right now, and food and consumption of meat and plants, they're all part of that conversation.
Oh yeah.
I know you and I know that, but like even more than the average person probably thinks. And so I think, this is just, NoBull Burger is just one little way of incorporating that more into our bodies, in hopes that it can help us live these more fulfilled lives. Because, we believe that it is directly related to the types of foods that we're eating. And they don't make it easy for us in this country to kind of make that shift and have access to that kind of stuff. And that's really unfortunate. And that's a whole other, conversation, I'm sure. But I think it's just important to start somewhere, right? Just make those little shifts. And I think you'll start feeling the difference. You'll start seeing it in your day to day. And I think even having this conversation, like, it's reminding me like this is something that, I don't want to take for granted either.
Right.
Of course I had maybe more awareness to it due to the way my parents raised me and whatnot with understanding the food. But it is something that, it's not to be taken for granted.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that's accessible everywhere and not everyone knows about too. So I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah. Well, so I want to give you an opportunity to share, like, what is the social? How can people get, I know y'all are in some markets, but you're selling online as well, right?
Yeah.
And so like, how can people find it so they can taste it and get addicted?
All the way. Yeah. Now that I've spieled the story. So, best place to find us is so our website, it's NoBull Burger, NoBull burger.com. And there's all the, you can find a store locator, you can find recipes,
right.
Our whole story, all the ins and outs. Definitely check us out on social. So Instagram, TikTok, you can find us at that handle at NoBull Burger. Okay. And definitely check that out because we're always doing giveaways, new stores where we're at, lots of really great recipe ways. I mean, that's been to see the way other people, all the different ways outside of the box people enjoy it. That's been awesome on social. And then, you can order us online from our website. We're also available in Whole Foods nationwide. Nice. They have our original and our mushroom flavor. And then a lot of the great independent and regional grocery stores as well throughout the country. But that website, cool. NoBullBurger.com, will have all, you can pop in your zip code and where there's a store located near you. And if not, it also helps to request us in stores. We're still a very small family business trying to grow. And so love spreading the word and love spreading the awareness out there. And if you don't see us in a store that you shop at, it always helps to give us a request and make that happen. But between the website, Instagram, socials, and then check us out at Whole Foods as well in the frozen section.
Awesome. And so like, and you sort of touched on this, but so y'all have other things in the works as far as like, other than burger, like things that are coming out, even though like you said, you can deconstruct it and make tacos out of it, or you can, you can do other things with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're definitely working on some things. We had the line of 5 out for a little while, and that was kind of like what we were trying to like push out there. And now we kind of see this need for other forms of meat alternatives that, quite frankly, other brands are just not doing as well. They're doing it with a lot of the fake food. And so, doing some experimenting. My mom's is the chef of the family, and really anything she touches just tastes incredible. She's wildly talented in the kitchen. So we're testing out some stuff. Hopefully by 2024, we'll definitely have some new flavors for sure. Right. Hopefully some new forms as well. Nice. But until then, definitely check out the website and our socials for all the different ways to get inspired on how to enjoy it.
Awesome. Well, so tell us one more time those North Star, those core mission values, so that people will hear it and understand like this is what sets you apart, because I think that's hugely important. And I'm not necessarily saying like your product, don't ever buy anybody else's. I'm not.
Well, that is what you're saying, Barry. No,
but it's. But I want to be clear in saying like following products that people like, that they get it and they understand that like they're building things from the standpoint of food as fuel for your body, and they want you to live long.
Absolutely.
Because, while some people out there are manufacturing things and they're like, I want this customer to buy as much as they can today, and so I'm going to get them addicted to it, and they're just going to drink 18 sodas a day, or they're going to have this much candy because they can't put it down. And I'm like, the way I look at what you're doing is like, I'm 49. My goal is to live to 140. So you've got a 90-year-old customer here. Like,
life's longer,
right? Like, so it's like that. If you can extend my life, I'm going to keep buying your product.
That's the good. I love that analogy there. And it's truly that. I mean, we have always said NoBull Burger is not meant to be a meat imitator, but a true farm to table veggie burger, not a farm to lab to table. We have made it our mission to help people eat closer to the earth so that you're not having to compromise on quality ingredients or flavor. You can have both with this. Yeah. And it's really just this understanding that it is made from 100% plants and 0% bull. And it's as simple as that. Awesome. It says it in the name, and we really kind of hold to those values as our company, our brand, and as new flavors and whatnot come out. And we're just hoping, we're just trying to do our part.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a guest, Lizzie.
Super exciting. Thank you, Jerry.